All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving deep into some seriously big questions. Like, are we all, humans and everything else alive? Are we really just driven by this need to survive and reproduce? That's what we're going to tackle.
You hit the nail on the head. The excerpt we're looking at today, it uses this idea of an unbroken chain. It's saying that every single one of your ancestors, going all the way back billions of years to the very first life, they had to survive and they had to reproduce, or you wouldn't be here.
Whoa. I mean, really,
Yeah.
think about that for a second. This massive chain, right? Going back billions of years, and every single link had to make it. It had to survive. It had to find a mate, and it had to make babies. And it's just, what are the odds?
It's mind-blowing, and it makes you ask, like, what's the point of all this? Why are we here? From a purely biological point of view, I mean. And it really seems like the answer, it all boils down to just those two things, surviving and reproducing.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense in a way, but doesn't feel like there's got to be more to it. I mean, come on, we humans, we have art and music and, philosophy and all that. It can't all just be about staying alive and making more humans, can it?
Of course not. It's definitely not that simple. But here's the thing. Maybe even all those amazing things we do, maybe even those are somehow connected to those basic drives, those urges to survive and reproduce, in ways we don't even realize. Take altruism, for example, being kind to others, helping them out. It builds connections, right? Makes the community stronger. And when the group is strong, well, everyone's chances of survival go up, including your own.
So even when we're being selfless, it could still be tied back to that primal urge.
Whoa, that is pretty deep. Okay, but what about free will? I mean, are we really just like puppets of our biology,
Yeah.
just dancing to the tune of these ancient instincts? Yeah, that's a big question for sure. And the excerpt gets into it too.
Hmm.
It's pretty complicated. See, this whole survival instinct thing, a lot of people get that wrong, especially when we're talking about, those really early life forms, like the single-celled organisms that popped up billions of years ago. Those guys weren't thinking about survival. No planning, no strategy, nothing like that.
Okay, but if it wasn't instinct, how did they survive long enough to reproduce? I don't get it.
Ah, well, that's where abiogenesis comes in. That's the whole process of life, popping into existence from non-living stuff. It's like molecules doing their thing, interacting and replicating. And guess what? The very first life forms, they were just these self-replicating molecules.
Hmm.
No brains, no thoughts, just chemistry. And the ones that were really good at replicating, well, they stuck around. And those guys, they eventually led to all the life we see today. Pretty amazing, right?
So it wasn't that they were smarter or better at surviving, they were just good at copying themselves? Wow, that changes things. Okay, but if those early life forms were just molecules following chemistry rules, how do we even decide what's alive and what's not? Where do we draw that line?
Ah, you've stumbled upon a question that's been bugging scientists and philosophers for centuries. And this excerpt, it actually brings up a really radical idea. It's called the Gaia hypothesis. And basically it says that the Earth itself, the whole planet, it's like one giant living organism. All these interconnected systems working together to keep everything in balance.
Whoa, hold on. The entire planet as one giant living thing. That's a big one to wrap my head around. So it's not just about me surviving or you surviving, it's about the whole planet surviving.
You got it. And that means we got to start thinking bigger,
Yeah.
like way bigger than just ourselves. It's about seeing how everything is connected.
Okay, my brain is definitely doing some stretching right now. We went from those tiny single-celled things to the whole planet being alive. But how does this connect back to instinct and free will? I mean, if even the planet is alive, where does that leave us humans?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. And to really understand that, we got to talk about a very special little creature, the C. elegans worm. And that's a story for the next part of our deep dive.
So last time we were talking about those C. elegans worms, right?
Yeah.
And how scientists can predict what they're going to do just by watching their neurons fire. It's kind of freaky, really, to think that even with such a simple nervous system, their choices might already be decided.
It makes you wonder, yeah, if we can figure out what a worm's going to do just by looking at its brain, does that mean our own decisions are, I don't know, predetermined too? Kind of makes you question the whole free will thing.
It does, especially because didn't the excerpt mention some studies with humans too, where they looked at brain activity and could predict what a person would choose even before they were aware of making the choice?
They did, they did. But there's a catch. Just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other. Just because there's brain activity before a decision doesn't mean that activity is what's making the decision happen. It could be the other way around, right? Maybe the brain activity is just like a side effect of the decision-making process, not the actual cause.
So maybe we're not off the hook yet when it comes to free will. Maybe we're not just super fancy robots running on pre-programmed code.
Maybe not. The human brain, it's incredibly complex. We're just scratching the surface of how it all works. There could be all sorts of things happening in there, stuff we haven't even discovered yet, that play a role in consciousness and decision-making.
Okay. That's a little less scary. But let's go back to those early life forms for a minute, the ones we were talking about before. You're saying how there wasn't any, like, conscious thought involved in their survival and reproduction, how it was all just chemistry and natural selection doing their thing.
Right, right. Those early life forms, they were basically just molecules, just doing what molecules do, following the laws of physics and chemistry. They didn't know they had to survive or reproduce. They didn't have a plan or anything like that. It just so happened that the ones who were good at replicating, well, they were the ones who kept going.
And over billions of years, that process, that's what led to all the amazing life we see today. I mean, from those simple molecules to, well, us, with our brains and feelings and all that.
That's it. That's evolution, baby. Natural selection working on all those random variations, shaping life bit by bit. And as life got more complex, well, so did the ways it survived and reproduced. Think about, like, the crazy dances some birds do to attract a mate, or how a lion stalks its prey.
Wow, it really is mind-blowing. All that from those simple beginnings. But those early life forms were just following chemical rules. I mean, how do we even know where to draw the line between living and non-living?
That's the question, isn't it? And you know what? It kind of brings us back to the Gaia hypothesis, that idea we talked about before, that the Earth itself might actually be one giant living organism, with all its systems working together, keeping everything in balance.
Yeah, I remember. The whole planet being alive. Still hard to wrap my head around, but okay. But how does that help us figure out what defines life exactly?
Well, the Gaia hypothesis makes us think about life differently. It's not just about individual organisms, right? It's about systems. If the whole planet can be seen as one living system, well, maybe the line between living and non-living isn't so clear after all. Maybe it's more blurry than we thought.
So it's not just about me surviving or you surviving. It's about the whole shebang, the entire planet making it.
Bingo. And that brings up some pretty big questions about our role in all this. If we humans are driven by these instincts to survive and reproduce, I mean, what does that mean for the planet? What kind of impact are we having?
Yeah, no kidding. Especially with all the stuff happening now, like climate change, right? It makes you think about the long game, about what our choices are doing to the planet.
It does. It does. And I think it highlights something really important. We need to start thinking about life in a more, holistic way. See how everything's connected. We can't just focus on our own little piece of the puzzle.
We've come a long way in this deep dive. Started with survival instinct in tiny organisms, and now we're talking about the survival of the whole planet. It's like our understanding of all this, it just keeps growing and growing.
It does, doesn't it? And, the deeper we go, the more we might find that all those ideas we started with about life and consciousness and, even free will, maybe we need to rethink them just a little.
I'm ready for more. What else have you got for us in this final part of our exploration?
Yeah.
I'm hooked. Okay, so we spent all this time talking about survival and reproduction, but there are some things that don't quite seem to fit. Like, what about altruism or creativity? Those don't exactly scream survival of the fittest, do they?
I see what you mean, yeah. It's like, where do those things fit into this whole picture?
Yeah.
It does make you think beyond just, like, the basic biology of it all.
Yeah, exactly. So how do we explain stuff like that?
Well, maybe even those higher level things like helping others or making art, maybe those are connected to survival and reproduction in ways we don't always see. Like, take altruism, right? Being kind to others, even if it puts you at risk, it can actually build stronger relationships in a group.
Oh, I see. So a stronger group means everyone has a better chance of surviving.
That's it. And it's not just about physical survival either.
Yeah.
Think about stories, art, music. Those things help pass down knowledge and traditions, right? So maybe it's not about keeping bodies alive, but keeping ideas and culture alive.
Huh. It's like even when we're doing things that seem, above just basic survival, we might still be contributing to it in some way.
Exactly. It shows just how deep these drives run, They're woven into everything we do, whether we realize it or not.
And, before we were talking about how free will might be an illusion, but you said that just because our brains make choices before we're even aware of them, it doesn't mean we have no control, right?
Right. We're not just, like, robots on autopilot. It's
Yeah.
more complicated than that. Sure, we might be predisposed to certain things because of, our biology and all that. But we also have the ability to think and learn and make conscious choices.
So it's not just one or the other, not just nature or nurture, instinct or free will. It's like they all mix together somehow.
You got it. And once you understand that, it can be pretty powerful because when you recognize how these deep-seated drives work, you can start to make choices that are more in line with what you truly value.
That's awesome. It means we're not just stuck following our instincts blindly. We can actually learn to use them, to shape them so we can make better choices for ourselves and for the planet.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that balance,
Mhm.
the balance between those primal urges and those higher aspirations.
This whole deep dive, it's really been something else. We started with those tiny little life forms and ended up talking about the fate of the whole planet. I feel like my brain just did a marathon.
Huh. It's been a wild ride for sure.
Mm.
And if there's one thing we've learned, it's that these drives, survival and reproduction, they're not just about biology. They're about our emotions, our creativity, even our sense of self. It's all connected.
Yeah, and as we face all these challenges in the world, climate change and all that, understanding this stuff feels more important than ever. Like, we got to figure out how to balance our own needs with the needs of the planet.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It's about seeing that we're all in this together, all connected. And that's a powerful thing.
This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you for taking us on this journey, deep into what makes us tick. And to everyone listening, keep thinking, keep exploring these questions. That's what makes us human, after all.